Many parents are concerned about their children's health if they are to return to school prematurely, but failing to send them back could result in them losing their place in a particular grade. The law also states that children have to go to school. So what are the alternatives? Could homeschooling be an option? Well, Jaco Lemmer is from the Gauteng Homeschooling Association. Jaco, good evening and thank you so much for your time. Let's talk about the kind of interest that we've seen with homeschooling, especially because many parents, whether they like it or not, have had to do it on some level during this 50-plus lockdown period.
Well, we've seen a tremendous increase in queries from people that want to have more information or seek guidance or assistance with homeschooling. We've probably been seeing more queries and requests in a week than we've normally seen in a period of more than 6 months. So the interest is great. There's definitely, because of the COVID-19 shutdown, a real need developing for parents to fulfill their legal obligation to ensure that their children are schooled to the best possible level and standard. And we must remember that ensuring that your child is educated, that your child is schooled, is not an option. It's an obligation that a parent has under the Children's Act.
What are parents mostly concerned about? What are the challenges that they bring before you, hoping you might be able to help them solve?
So mostly people want to know how do they go about registering for homeschooling, what the law requires of them to start with this, and then once they've had the response to the legal side, then how to choose a curriculum, how to find proper tutoring, because parents feel that they might not be the best equipped to teach a child, for instance, in an area like sciences or mathematics or those kinds of difficult subjects. So legalities and also choosing a curriculum are the bigger ones. And then support groups. Where do they find support in communities to assist them to embark on this very important route?
Sure. And for those that are asking you to give them assistance now, is it a case of not wanting to send their children back into the schooling system, whether it's public or private?
Can you just repeat that last question?
So for those who are reaching out to you now, is it because they don't want to send their children back to school?
I understand. There's actually a mix. A lot of people are concerned for how long the COVID-19 virus will be with us. So some people are concerned for the children's health. Some people have been engaged in homeschooling now for the last 8 weeks. And they find that they're discovering their children anew, that they're finding their children's interests, and they feel that while this is a forced situation, that it's probably a good idea for them for the future, that homeschooling is a real solution. We must remember that homeschooling has been around in South Africa for over 2 decades. From a legal point of view, in the old South Africa it was illegal. Over time, people have realized that homeschooling is a real option. And now with this forced closure of schools, people are starting to consider this as a real option for their families. Sure. So it's a fear of disease and then also seeing the opportunities for their children.
So what is the registration process and how much can parents expect to pay when going the homeschooling route?
Well, let's deal with the cost. First of all, there's a widely held misconception that homeschooling your children is more expensive to do than to actually send them to public or private schools. This is not really the case. One must remember that if you homeschool your child, there's no school uniforms to buy. There's a lot less peer pressure and brand awareness initially with your children. And also, it's easier for children to share books amongst themselves, and the books that you buy this year is retained for the next year. So homeschooling isn't something that is just for the elite or for the rich, as is often said. Secondly, the process for registration that you referred to is a bit of a contentious issue at the moment. On the face of it, it seems easy. You have to comply with Articles 3 and Articles 51 of Act 84 of 1996. So in order to register, you have to read these articles extremely carefully and ensure that you understand them. Then you download the application form from the department's website and read it very carefully and ensure that you understand those implications. And then, after you've done all of that, you realize that the current demands are that you comply with the future act and the policy and the future policy. Now, this is where the problem comes in. You have to comply with a policy in interpreting Article 3 and Article 51 when you do the homeschooling. But that policy that you have to use to interpret Article 3 and 51 is based on a draft bill that has not been enacted in Parliament. So we're actually in a state of limbo at the moment because of the current situation with this policy, or this bill not being enacted by Parliament yet. And then there's also the context in which a parent homeschools, and that is that you have to always act in the best interest of your child. You have to ensure that your child gets the best possible education and that your child gets the best possible parental guidance in education. And all these things play a role when you decide about homeschooling. But simply spoken, it's Article 3 and 51.
All right, Jaco, thanks for your insights.